Hi guys, this is Alexandra Lemay with Low Tech Garden. I haven't posted any videos in the past year and a half because I have been very busy working full time. On the top of that, I've been going to school nearly full time as well. So as you could imagine, I could barely spend more than 30 minutes a week in my garden. However, it turns out to be a great experiment to see how those permaculture principles that I was trying to utilize in that garden were at work. And I'm very happy to report to you that despite the fact that my garden was abandoned for more than a year, yes, I did in the time of drought here in Central Texas. We have in the summer sometimes month and month without rain, and temperatures above 105 degrees for weeks and weeks in a row. And once in a while I did water the fruit trees and bananas that I have in the garden. However, besides that, the garden was just existing on its own, and right now we're gonna go and check out how it maintained itself all those months, pretty much 97% on its own. And this is the big picture view of my overgrown garden that hasn't been maintained for the past almost a year. And then I will specifically focus on few plants that did really well on their own and produced. This pecan tree I brought as a small baby plant in my minivan about 5 years ago, and now it's about, I would say, 12 to 15 feet tall and already producing quite a few nuts, probably enough to make a pecan pie this year. And I'll have to collect them before the birds and the squirrels eat them. That's what those nuts look like. And again, no effort on my part, not much effort on my part as far as maintaining this tree, just watering here and there when it's really dry. At the foot of the pecan tree, just as in a forest, I'm growing some strawberries, and the season as well is way over for those, but we don't have a lot of them, but a handful here and there. It's a little bit bigger patch right now, some of them dormant. The season is over, but we did have a lot of blackberries, and I have blackberry bushes in different parts of our garden. It's one of those plants that does very well in Central Texas, even in our drought conditions. Bertocoat keeps reseeding itself. This year it's not doing so well due to drought conditions. Nevertheless, it's hanging in there, and hopefully we'll be able to go to seed and continue replanting itself here. My Echinacea patch is well established, and again, season is over. It finished blooming. Right now we have seeds. I collected probably a pound for my Echinacea teas that we drink during flu seasons. Further up the hill, I have asparagus. About 4 to 5 years ago, I seeded probably about 6-7 seeds, not knowing how it will do, but it's been coming back each year and getting thicker and spreading out and doing really well. We have alkaline soil around here, and it really doesn't mind alkaline soil. In the past couple of years in the spring, we've been collecting several batches of asparagus. Not a lot, but enough to keep it in the garden, especially with the fact that it comes back on its own and requires very little maintenance on my part. Further up the hill, I have a lemongrass patch, one of few that we have in the garden. Very drought tolerant plant. We use it in different Southeast Asian dishes that we prepare. And right next to it we have one of the chia seed plants, and I just threw a few seeds in the garden a few years ago, and it just keeps reseeding itself in random areas. Not enough to give me seeds to be used, but I just like to have it on hand. It's a bit dry for turmerics this year. Nevertheless, as from previous years, I know that even though the plant on the top of the ground doesn't look nice, sometimes there's a lot of work going on inside the ground, and I'll still be able to collect a few roots of this plant. And unfortunately, my irrigation system doesn't work. I was trying to build some, but it didn't work, so I water it here and there by hand. Right next to it there is an edible wild plant. I'm embarrassed, but I forgave the name of it, and I use it in smoothies. I didn't have to seed it, it just showed up out of the blue randomly. As anyone who attempts permaculture, I have a comfrey plant here, one of the few that I have, and it's said to enrich the soil with nitrogen. I use the leaves for compost and just like to have those on hand. Last year this granite tree brought, I don't know how many, maybe 100 plus fruit, but this year after the deep freeze in the winter, half of it died, and it has few granites on it, but it doesn't do super well. So this fall I will try to prune it and fertilize maybe, and do some research on how to come back the granites to life. But again, that takes no effort at this point on my part. Fig trees is another species that does incredibly well in central Texas. The season is over, but this not a very large tree brought several pounds of figs this year, as well as fed wildlife. Right now there is this random branch that grew out of the blue and still has few figs on it. So again, very low maintenance, just watering here and there during drought spell. I'm very impressed with Malabar spinach. That one requires literally zero maintenance, and in fact becomes a bit of a trouble because it reseeds itself all over the garden and takes over other patches. But it's good in smoothies, and I add some of it to salads as well. Sweet potato is another one that comes back year after year. We harvest fairly decent amount of sweet potatoes because I have them in a couple of different raised beds. This year though, again, this patch looks pretty embarrassing because I did nothing to it, and it's all either volunteer plants or random weeds. And even this squash, I don't know where it came from. It hasn't produced any squash yet, but we'll see it will do or not. But I wanted to focus your attention on sweet potatoes. Those are great. They produce root vegetables, but also during the summertime they do give some greens for salads and smoothies as well. My little banana patch, 4 years ago I bought one small dwarf banana, and now it's spread out and pretty much is trying to occupy the entire area. Last year we managed to have a bunch of bananas, although I had to collect them before the freeze. Nevertheless, it was pretty surprising because Central Texas gets pretty cold during the winter month, and bananas need full 12 months and plus of warm, wet weather. And here is my bamboo patch. In Central Texas we have lack of biomass due to the heat and lack of rains, and naturally occurring live oak and cedars are not suitable for composting. So this bamboo is great for producing leaves that I later dry right here and then use for my compost. I have a double barrel. I didn't have any time this year for a hot pile, but right here you see compost that is being cooked, and in the next one compost that was cooked months ago, just some leftovers. And look how beautiful it is. Nice black fertile soil that was produced from kitchen scraps, leaves, and a few other ingredients. As you have just seen for yourself, the garden did quite all right despite the fact that it was neglected for such an extended period of time, a little over a year. And now I'm trying to bring it back to life. And because my soils are already established, because there was so much previous work that was done in the garden, like ground cover and companion plants, it's a lot easier to revive it now. All I do is to have to add some compost, water it, and the plants grow. And definitely when I maintain my garden, I keep on watering and keep on amending with compost. So slowly I will revive other raised beds as well. But I hope this video was helpful and encouraging for you to learn more about permaculture and try to implement some of those principles in your garden as well. I'm not as busy this fall, so I'll be able to have follow-up videos on how things are going in my garden. And one of the videos that I'm planning on making is about how to create soil in the conditions where there is no soil, like here in Central Texas. So stay tuned for more news from the low-tech garden. I'm filming this video about 8 weeks later. It's now mid-October in Texas. It was August when I filmed the first part of the video. And this raised bed, you saw it earlier, I have been reviving it in the past 8 weeks, and it really took me nothing. It took me about 20 hours to try to build this raised bed, especially on the slope, trying to terrace it and fill with compost, all of that. But it took me only 30 minutes to revive it. I just pulled out the wildflowers that I'm growing here that took over while the bed was neglected. Then I added some compost and seeded or planted baby plants in it. And right here I have, oops, my shadow. I have some beets and kales for salad, baby kales. Then we have young Brussels sprouts. At the back there is holy basil, broccoli, and from seed growing zucchini. Look at that, it's October 18th here, and look at the zucchinis. Hopefully it's going to be warm for a little longer and we'll get good harvest from those two plants. And here we have more kale. I never let my kales grow super large because we pick the leaves almost every day. At the back I left wildflowers blooming because they feed bees and butterflies and also help with pollination. So it all works good together.